because you wanted to be on the show.
Yes.
So how do you sift out the noise? Like, what is your advice to kids these days? Like, how do they stay away from the noise?
I think I tell people don't call me when you're bored.
Person you are.
Yeah.
Because we focus on studying other people.
Yeah.
Without studying ourselves. Or I just want to ask you one question.
Okay.
If you want to give one advice, or what is the biggest advice that you ever received?
My dad.
But see, your situation forced you to get into teaching.
Yeah.
Because you had no job.
Yeah.
And when you got into it, you love it.
Yes. That has been, God was like, this is what you need to do, stupid. He didn't say that specifically to me, but he was like, this is what you're supposed to be doing, stupid. And so he just helped guide me into the place that I was supposed to be all along. But even from when I was a little girl and we played, like my uncle, he would always set up like a grocery store for us. And I always played like the store manager, or I was always the one teaching my like siblings. I remember I taught my older brother how to tie his shoe. I was 4, he was 5, and I taught him how to tie his shoe. And it's just always just been a part of who I am. And if I had followed the blueprint of my aunt, because she's a teacher too, I said I could have literally just followed her life, because it's definitely patterned after that. But I just wanted to do my own thing, but that is not what God intended. But me becoming a teacher has probably been the single most, the second best decision that I've ever made in my life. Yes.
The second best. What is the
second best? The best is deciding to allow Jesus Christ to be my Lord and Savior.
Oh, really?
Yes.
But do you regret anything taking this decision?
When you regret, if I regret any part of my life, that means that this might not have happened. Me being a part of Toastmasters might not have happened. Me being in Dubai might not have happened. And so when you think about regrets, it's like, what part of it would take away what I'm doing right now? And if it would take away from my life right now, then I don't want it, because you would wind up somewhere else. And it's like, yes, have I made some stupid decisions? Have I made some decisions that weren't the best? Of course. And it's a part of life. But to say that I regret it, you have to be a little bit careful, because it's like, what part of my life now would be erased because I decided that I wanted to take something back?
I'm very curious about something you said. You said in 2008 you were looking for a job.
Yes.
And you're in America.
Yes.
See, most of us Africans, us that grew up in Africa, we grew up with the mindset that if we can just get to America, everything will be okay. But you're in America and you are looking for a job. Because we know that there are many opportunities. I mean, they told us that there are many opportunities in America. That if you can just get to America, your life will be better, everything will be okay. But you were born and raised there, and you were still looking for a job. Like, what is that?
So when the entire country is going through an economic downturn, then people are like, businesses are scaling back. And a lot of times, like, especially for degree positions, they will say they want someone with experience, but I can't get experience if you won't give me a job. And so you have a lot of those things going on, where it's like, they want you to have all this experience, but it's like, if I just graduated, how do I get experience if you won't give me the job to get the experience? And I think sometimes, Audra, even though opportunities are available to you, you have to be willing to look for those opportunities as well, because nobody's going to give you anything. You have to know that there are other options. But if you've been, and I like to say, institutionalized in a sense, because when I was going through high school, they told us that we needed to go to college to be able to get a good job. So that's what we did. But we weren't privy to the fact that owning a business is probably the most beneficial thing to help lead to economic success.
So your problem back then was the experience.
Yeah.
Like you just graduated and you didn't have any experience.
But then there were businesses were also scaling back. And the place where I was at, it was a much smaller town. It was a college town. But where I'm from originally, I was in Gainesville for college. But then I'm from Orlando, Florida, which is much larger. And so the way that I got the teaching job is God asked me, he said, where do you want to teach? Because I was like putting in applications to be a teacher. Like after I was tutoring, I put in an application to be a teacher. I was putting in applications in Gainesville and I was putting in applications in Orlando. And he said, you got to decide which one you want. And so I said, okay, I want to be in Orlando. And I applied to several schools in Orlando. And then he asked me, he said, which school do you want? And I remember saying Carver Middle School. And he told me, he was like, I want you to fast until 12 o'clock. And so I did. And when I went to my phone, Carver Middle School called me and they told me that they wanted me to come in for an interview. I interviewed and got the job.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you're so particularly about hearing what God is saying.
Yeah.
Is there any difference between your intuition and like, because I hear many people saying my intuition told me that, and versus you saying that God told me, like, is there any difference?
The difference is when you acknowledge God for who he is, then you don't have to say something. You don't have to say intuition. You call him who he is. And so I'm going to call him God. I'm going to call him Jesus. I'm going to call him the Holy Spirit. And so I don't have to say intuition if I know who he is.
So it's basically acknowledging that this is God talking to me at this particular point in time.
And knowing that it's him. And the reason I know it's him is because we have a relationship.
And you guys had this relationship since when you were in college?
When I was a kid. And I was like, I think we're more connected. We're really connected as kids because we haven't been on the earth that long. So it's like you're super connected as a kid, and there's not much noise because as you grow and you experience, then sometimes there's noise, there's static. And then as you're growing as a teenager and you're like learning about yourself and you is discovering boys and, and all those different things, I was like, that's noise. And so when you get very clear and you get very still, then you can hear, but you have to be willing to hear because he's always speaking, but are you listening?
See, when you're just talking right now, I'm just thinking, when you're talking about noise, I can't imagine you talking about noise in those days, like versus now, because I think now the noise is like we're living in a chaos world. That's what I call it. Like there's information everywhere fighting for our attention.
Yeah.
So how do you sift out the noise? Like what is your advice to kids these days? Like how do they stay away from the noise?
I think I tell people don't call me when you're bored, right? I tell them don't call me when you're bored because I believe that you can always find something to do. And I'll tell people, like they'll say, oh, I don't want you to be alone. And I'll tell them I like me.
Yeah.
I like me. And if I like me, I don't have to have people around. Yes, people are a plus, but I like me. And so you have to like you. And some people and in some cultures, it's like, why are you like talking like that? But it's like, in order for me to be good for you, I have to be good for me. And so I think one of the biggest things is liking yourself. And then, okay, what is it that you want? If you're not living the life that you want, you got to let other people and what the videos they're making and things, you got to cut them off because you're living a nightmare and they're living a dream. And that I got that from, I can't think of his name right now, but he's a pastor, or He was a pastor, but now he's like, Rich Man, the Poor. He has a book. He has not Rich Dad Poor Dad. I can't think of his name right now, but he is in Tampa, Florida. But he was like, he didn't have a TV for a long time because he was like, why would I be watching these people who are living out their dreams and I'm broke? Like, it doesn't make sense. And honestly, even when you wake up in the morning, you have to have quiet. And the reason why you want to be quiet is so that you can hear God's voice, so that you can hear your own voice, so that you can think clearly, to make the right decisions. Because if you automatically just start scrolling on your screen, then you hear what everybody else is thinking, and you might take on that personality that you've just heard on your screen. And so it's important for us to disconnect so that we can know who we are. And we can, like, for those of us who talk to God, listen to the voice of God, and then go about your day. And you can watch videos. And there's a time and place. I won't say that I never, scroll or on social media, lost myself in looking at videos. But I was like, you have to make sure that you set some boundaries so that you do have that time to truly discover who you are and who you're becoming.
And that is really interesting, because I think disconnection from the world is reconnection to ourselves. Like, if you have time for yourself, if you have time to really study the person you are, because we focus on studying other people without studying ourselves.
The worst thing we can do is focus on other people. And a lot of times, even when you think about relationships, we are working to get other people to love us. You don't love you, but you want somebody else to love you. Does that make any sense? You don't even like you. Why would you? You don't even like you. Why would you try to get somebody else to like you before you like yourself? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So it's so important for us to have a good relationship with ourselves. And what I believe is that I can only love someone to the magnitude that I love myself. And so if the love that I have is broken, what I'm going to give to other people is brokenness.
And that is really interesting, because if you don't have self-love, there's nothing that you're going to do, because any relationship that you get into is going to reflect who you are. The love is going to reflect on you. And so if you cannot give that love out, I mean, what you're receiving is simply what you have already.
You can only give what you have. So if I have not developed myself, if I have not done the work to be okay, then I'm only going to give you the bits and pieces of myself that I have. And if what I have is broken, that's what I give you. And it's like, that's why it's so important for us to work on ourselves. Are we perfect? No. Is perfection the aim? No. But progress is better than anything. And I know we were talking previously about people blaming their parents. Sometimes our parents are just the conduit to get us to this earth. They don't have anything else to give. But the fact that they decided to allow for you to be born is a blessing. And now it's up to you to do the thing that you need to do in order to become who it is that you're supposed to become. Is it fair? Probably not. But am I going to wallow in that? And if you do, you're going to be alive and dead. But if you choose to pick yourself up and to do what's necessary to do the work, then you're going to be in a far better place than just letting your circumstance decide who you are and who you're supposed to become.
And I think that's the biggest part of being responsible, because many of us, we don't take responsibility for where we are, because I believe where you are, it's only you that can do something about it. But many people just keep blaming where they're coming from, their parents, their situations, the economic, just blaming everything. And I remember, I love Jim Rohn. I listen to him a lot. And he was telling, like, because he said he was sharing his story, and he said he started working when he was, I think, 19 years old, and then when he gets to around 25 years old, and everything wasn't working, and he found this good friend of him that introduced him to someone that became his mentor.
Yes.
And then he said one day his mentor called him and asked him, like, why haven't you been doing better? You started working from 19 years old. This is almost 6 years you're working.
Yeah.
Why haven't you been doing better? And he said he brought up a long list of why.
The government, his job, everything.
Yeah.
But it's like you can blame those things, but is it going to help you get to where you need to be? And it's not. It's like you can blame, putting the blame on someone else gives them power.
Exactly.
It gives them power over your life, but they don't have the power. The power is in you. I remember I was talking to one of my mentees, and she was very nervous about going to this interview and all these things. And I told her, I said, this job has a problem. That's the reason why they're having this interview. They have a problem. And you're the solution to the problem. And I said, you have to tell yourself that you're the solution to their problem. But you have to realize that you do have that power within yourself to be the solution to a problem in the world. That's why people have so much money, because they solved a problem. And so we have to become more problem solvers than anything else. And that's what's going to help us reach the next level.
Yeah. And I think that the problem is not actually that we don't have the solution. The problem is that we think that we cannot be the solution.
We are the solution. It's
Exactly.
like, even when you think about a job, if you lose your job, sucks, because you need to pay your bills, right? The lights and walls need to be taken care of. But what happens is the only thing that job gets is their job back. The gifts, the talents, the abilities walk out the door when you leave. And so when you think about it from that perspective, it's like they need me to be here. But if they choose for me not to be here, I'm not losing, because I can take my gifts, my talents, my abilities to where I'm going.
That is really interesting. And this podcast is getting really interesting. I think we're going to do another one. Yeah, I love some of the stuff that you're sharing on the show right now. And I just want to ask you one question.
Okay.
If you want to give one advice, or what is the biggest advice that you've ever received?
Man, that's a really good question. My dad. So my dad, he told me you can do anything for a year. And that has gotten me through so many different situations. Having a terrible roommate, having like financial difficulties at certain times, or even when I was thinking about like coming home from college, because I did think about like just being like, I'll just go to work. And my dad said, you can do anything for a year. So that was one of the biggest things. And then the another one is from my uncle, who's like my second dad. And he told me, he said, decide, don't negotiate. Decide, do not negotiate, which helps you to realize that making a decision is so important. Because not making a decision is a decision itself. So don't negotiate with yourself. Don't negotiate with things that you know are not good for you. Decide, but don't negotiate between the two, because then that's when you get into like murky water and, indecision, or, just things that are not the best for you. And so, those are the two pieces of advice that is
really interesting. And what are you grateful for right now?
Second chances and opportunities, and life showing up the way that I want it to. Because sometimes we'll desire something and we'll think that it won't happen. But if you believe it And even when you think about if you're a praying person, if you pray, you have to believe that it's going to be. And it will be if you ask.
And I think that is what most people need to understand.
Yeah.
Because praying without believing is like you're planting seeds where there's no fertile ground. You're just throwing seeds everywhere.
Yeah. And then working in that direction. So whatever gifts you have, like making sure that you nurture it. So yeah, I'm gonna pray, but I'm gonna work, because faith without works is dead. So I'm gonna pray, I'm gonna work. Kerry Washington, an actress in Hollywood, she said, I'm gonna pray and then I'm gonna run, because that bus might be my bus. But if I pray and don't run, I might miss my bus. But I'm going to pray and run, because that might be the bus that's mine. And every opportunity is not for you. Everything is not for you, but there are things that are for you. And if it's meant for you, then you have to pray towards it, work towards it, and believe that it's going to work out in your favor.
And that is interesting. I remember, I don't know if it's a quote, but I read it from a book. And the book says, the answers to our prayers comes when we are working toward it. Like, you don't just pray and wait.
Yeah.
You pray and you work.
Yeah. When you think about, in the Bible where it talks about, what was I going to say? I don't remember. But even, okay, so I'll go to a different story. Like the story of the sower.
All right.
Like
interesting
sowing
story.
seed, or the talents.
Yeah.
Right? So you have one with 5 talents, they go get 5 more talents.
Yeah.
The one with 2 talents goes to get 2 more talents.
2 more talents.
The person with 1 talent goes to hide that talent, and then what they have gets taken away from them. So if I have this talent, and granted, then it was talking about money, but even when you think about your giftings, if I have, even if it's just 1 talent or 1 gift, if I go bury it and do nothing with it, even that which I had is going to go away. And so he who has more will be given to him. So the one with 5, he got 5 more. The one with 2, he got 2 more. So if I'm working towards something, that's when more is going to come. And even when you think about celebrities, they already have, but people still give them stuff for free.
Exactly.
And so it's like the same principle will work for us if we work the principle.
And talking about the story of the talent, I remember Jim Rohn explaining this story. And he said the lesson from the story is that whatever you don't use, you lose. Yeah. Because the talent was taken from this guy that had 1 talent and given to the one that had 10. And he was like, if you have something and you don't use it, you're going to lose it. Yeah. If you have a talent and you don't work the talent out, you're going to lose the talent. Even if it's your gift or even if it's your talent, if you don't do something about it, you're going to lose it.
Yeah. What I'm thinking about is where it says that your gift will make room for you and it'll put you before great men. And it's like your gift, yes, you have it, but it needs to be cultivated. It has to be cultivated. You can't, talent can, it can take you some places, but it's like your gift is what's going to put you before great people. And so it's not that you just have this gift. You still have to cultivate it. If you think about your favorite footballer, I'm quite certain that their workout regimen is crazy. Their practice regimen is crazy. For the greatest speaker, I'm quite certain Jim Rohn and Les Brown and all of these great speakers have put in hours and hours of learning. I remember Les Brown saying that when he wanted to be a legislator, he and even like be a speaker, he remembered so many quotes. He just started remembering all these different quotes. So when he had these conversations, when he was talking to crowds, he would be able to talk to them and have that together. And him practicing, it takes practice. Like you have to practice. You have to cultivate and nurture. Sometimes you have to get a mentor. You might have to spend money to get better at what it is that you have, but it's going to pay off in the end. And you have to remember, especially if you are a believer, that God is working everything for your good.
That is interesting. Talking about code, I know you're someone that loves codes. I just want to ask, what's your best code? The best one that you've ever heard?
Okay, what came to my mind first, and I like it because I've used it before, is what Martin Luther King said. He said, if you cannot run, if you cannot fly, then walk. No, then run. If you cannot fly, then run. If you cannot run, then walk. If you cannot walk, then crawl, but by all means, keep moving. And so that's something that I take with me. It's like, do it when you're afraid. Do it when it's hard. Do it when it looks like it's not going to work out. Continue to do it, and it'll work out in the end.
That's an interesting quote. And when you think about it, that is how life is. Because sometimes you're going to be flying, and sometimes you'll have to just run. Sometimes you'll have to crawl. And but by all means, you have to keep that. That is progress. Like you have to keep making progress at every stage.
Yeah, and I think that we've been misled a lot by people. Like even when you look on like Instagram and you see people in all these like big houses and different things like that, and we think that it's going to happen overnight. It is a marathon and not a sprint, and we have to know that a little bit. All of it adds up. It adds up. And so doing a little each day is what adds up to those big moments.
That is really interesting. All right. I think we're running out of time.
Okay.
And I think we can do something some other time.
Indeed.
Yeah, because I think this is really interesting. And I had a lot of questions to ask you, but the conversation flows so quickly that I don't even remember most of the questions.
All is well. And then, I talk a lot. So, you got to get your questions in quick.
Yeah. No, but I think we should do something some other time.
No problem.
Right. So thank you so much
Thank you for having me.
For coming to the show. And thank you guys for watching this interesting podcast with Shavonda Stephens. And if you like contents like this, then you should follow this channel, and you should you should subscribe, you should share with your friends and family, and so that they can listen to something interesting like this as well. All right. Thank you, and see you on the next show.